Illinois state capital. This is your Capital Connection.
Welcome to Capital Connection. I'm Mark Maxwell. In just a little more than 2 weeks, recreational marijuana will be for sale and legal here in Illinois. Earlier this week, Governor J.B. Pritzker and Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx held a meeting and went into court together as they watched the first of many people who have low-level cannabis convictions see their records expunged, a first step on their way to a fresh start.
As a prosecutor who's previously prosecuted these cases, we must own our role in the harm that we have caused, and particularly to communities of color.
A criminal record carries with it more than stigma. It prevents people from being considered for job opportunities. We will never be able to fully remedy the depth of the unfairness and the damage that it's visited upon so many families. But we can govern our state with the courage to admit the mistakes of our past.
And with the rollout of recreational marijuana well on its way, just about to begin here in Illinois, law enforcement also had significant concerns, specifically about cannabis canines, or drug-sniffing dogs who had been trained to sniff out marijuana. But they are also warning any of you who do buy legal amounts of recreational marijuana, there are still strict rules in place about how you can and cannot transport the marijuana with you as you drive from point A to point B. Under the law, recreational marijuana can only be transported in an odor-proof container, and if you follow the law enforcement tells us you won't have any problems.
It's obviously, if it's odor-proof, then our canines should not be able to smell it. And so if our canines are alerting on a vehicle, then that will mean that it's not in compliance of the law.
And alongside the rollout of cannabis comes the rollout of more casinos in Illinois. The Illinois Gaming Board has in its possession 5 different certifications from 5 different cities that have taken in competing bids and applications from developers and operators who want to build casinos in their home city. One of them in Rockford came under scrutiny earlier this week as we learned that the business associates and campaign donors of State Senator Dave Severson, the Republican who helped to write the gaming bill, just so happened to be the investor group that won the city of Rockford's approval. Senator Severson tells us that he was not a paid lobbyist and was not lobbying, but rather advocating when he reached out directly to county officials in Winnebago County. We went and talked to one of the developers there who feels he was jilted and that the state senator was not representing his interests.
He was competing actively against you?
I think there's a lot of language that actively showed he was.
This key piece of legislation.
Senator Dave Severson led the charge for Republicans to promote 6 new casinos, with a lot riding on the line in his hometown of Rockford.
Thousands of jobs and billions of dollars of construction.
One of those construction companies, Ringland Johnson, is owned by Brent Johnson, one of Severson's biggest campaign donors who invested in the Hard Rock Casino and is in line to win the contract to build it if the Gaming Board awards Hard Rock a license. Johnson and his trust combined to donate more than $96,000 to Severson's campaign fund. Severson's business partner, Rick Nielsen, also backed the Hard Rock bid. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame musician from Cheap Trick owns a share of the Stockholm Inn with Severson. His spouse is listed as a casino investor. Business partner with Senator Severson, or how would you describe?
He's the brains, I'm just the eye candy.
Nielsen lobbied state lawmakers to give Rockford a casino, and when they did, Severson returned home to start working local officials. At a county meeting in August, Severson passed out copies of this map he had printed off the internet. It included handwritten notes as evidence the county should support the casino bid nearest the highway that his donors and partners had already invested in.
The problem of going into downtown locations, despite what people would like or wish it to be, they're not economic generators. When a casino comes into an area, people go there, they stay there, they shop in this casino, they eat in the casino, and the restaurants and shops around it get devastated. And I know you've seen pictures, every single casino in Illinois, look at the economic development around it, you see that it doesn't. It actually hurts economic development.
Ron Kluwer applied to put a casino here on riverfront property adjacent to the downtown area. The city denied his application.
The timeline was aggressive.
He feels the city set the bar too high, sped the process up, effectively sidelined competition, and gave a clear advantage to insiders connected to Severson, who already knew the law inside and out.
He clearly is lobbying. He was absolutely lobbying.
Had Rockford used the same standards as other cities approved for a casino in Illinois, Kluwer predicts his bid would have stood a chance before the gaming board.
Dave works to move an agenda. I'm not exactly sure whose interests those are. I don't believe he represents me and my interests now.
How confident are you that you could have pulled it off?
Oh, I know we could have pulled it off.
What we still don't know, are there mystery investors hidden behind trusts who stand to profit on the casino?
All the investors should be publicly available.
The city did publish a list of investors, but out of 4 trusts, only the names of the trustees, not the beneficiaries, are public.
Taxpayers should be able to know who they are. Trust or no trust, they knew when they set that up what was the effect of that would be.
Lawyers for the city of Rockford did tell us they did not think that Ron Kluwer or Gorman Casino's application was complete or as thoroughly vetted as the winning bid, as the one that got the city's approval. The gaming board has still yet to award it a license. Governor Pritzker opened up his checkbook and spent big earlier this week in his push to promote the progressive income tax on the ballot in 2020. The governor dropped $5 million into his new campaign fund that is dedicated solely to convincing voters to vote yes on the 2020 ballot question to approve that tax in the land of Lincoln. Governor Pritzker did, of course, also spend a record $166.5 million to get the job in his campaign in 2018. Now he's spending that extra money to try and get his job done. That $5 million check will go into many initiatives to buy ads and promote public messaging. It's called Vote Yes for Fairness, the campaign committee. It's reserved only for that cause and cannot be used like some other dark money groups to funnel money to candidates or other campaigns. We talked to the head of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, Todd Meisch, who plans to join us in the coming weeks. He said this progressive tax is not polling well, and when he saw Governor Pritzker cut a check for $5 million, he thought that was evidence the governor is concerned this might fail when voters weigh in. And State Senator and Democrat Andy Manar, who chairs a budget committee in the Senate, told us what he thinks could happen and what is at stake if this progressive income tax fails in 2020.
What is at stake? So clearly, if we don't have some, what I would describe as structural change to our tax code, we're going to be doing the same thing that we've been doing for years. I think it'll be a repeat of 4 years under Governor Rauner with budgets.
When we come back, a look at the story the nation is watching all week, the push for impeachment in Congress, and how Illinois' members of Congress responded to those calls. That's next. Stick around.